Let us offer our consecration to the Lord. Lord, we offer up to you this day, and we ask that your name be glorified in all that we do. We ask that we serve you in humble ways, that we may become channels of your love, that all may glorify you and all may know you. And we ask this through Christ our Lord. Well, again, we're continuing in Hebrews as we've been doing all this week, and we're in Hebrews 8. So if you are looking at your favorite, what are they called, daily missal, whether it's there's also the hardcover version that cover the entire year. There's also that. I think it's St. Joseph Daily Missal, and maybe there's some others. And there's also the monthly subscriptions of such daily missals as The Word Among Us and also Magnificat. There's also the online ones such as bible.usccb.org that comes to us from the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops. And there's also others as well. There's Bible Hub, which I'm not sure if it has the actual daily readings, but you can look them up and find them in the Bible. And any version of the Bible just about that you'd like. And then there's also Verbum, which is what I use to prepare my homilies and also to do the radio show. And there are others out there, so do keep that in mind. And that's just in English. There are other, many of the bishops' conferences throughout the world also have the readings in different languages. So they're available in English. I think they might be available in Spanish at the usccb.org. as well, but also I believe you can find them at the Episcopal Conference of Latin American Bishops, which is called CELAM. I think it's celam.org, CELAM. Also cnbb.org.br, which I use, which is the Conferencia Nacional de Bispos de Brasil. I knew I'd get that right, which is the Episcopal Conference of the Brazilian bishops. And, of course, that'll be in Portuguese. Salem will have it in Spanish, all that. So, anyway, as we look over the reading today, we're looking at chapter 8, and we're looking at these words where we're coming to understand a basic teaching of Christianity. And that is, and this comes right out of Romans 1, among other things. And this, again, when you look at this, you'd say, well, that you can see why they would think it would be St. Paul, but it's not St. Paul. It's somebody else. But we look at that and we recognize that you had the first covenant, the covenant that was made. You have several covenants. You have the one that was made with Abraham. Then you have the one that was made with Moses, and you can also see that further ratified under Joshua. And that's where that famous line comes from, as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. And that was when they got into the promised land. Joshua had the law, which was the old Jewish law read, and the question was, are you going to follow the law, or are you going to follow another law, which would probably be the law of the pagans? And he said, as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. Now, when I was in the Navy, I used to have that expression, that passage in my car, which was an old Chevy Monza. Won't go there. So anyway, it was a great car. It was good, but I, as the old saying goes, the dealer who is no longer in business saw me coming. So anyway, but that was my car, and it says, as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. And I used to say, well, this is my house, because essentially it was. I didn't have a house when I was in the Navy because I was in the Navy, so that was my house. And so I had that. And by the way, I bought my car. I told you that I spent previous time in my life, my first 3 years in the Navy, and I was a heavy drinker. I also was not a driver. I knew enough not to mix the two. So when I quit drinking, I go, I can drive now. I can even buy a car, because I would not, and I still don't. If I am going someplace and I am driving, I don't care if it's to one of the restaurants 2 blocks down the road. If I'm in my car, I will not drink, and that's a rule. And if I do have a drink, it is so limited. It is, it'll only be one beer, and it'll only be, I know I won't be driving at least until the next day. I will, for the rest of the time, drink non-alcoholic beer. So I'm very strict on all that stuff, extremely strict. And so I'm talking to you about all that, having an understanding of this whole history has a tremendous part in my conversion. And one of the aspects of me coming back to the faith and giving up drinking in the process was now I could drive. And that became my house. As for me and my house, as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. And that was part of ratifying the old covenant, which was the law. You follow the law, and that's what Jesus dealt with when he was walking the earth. But what was happening is they were making the letter of the law as strong, as solid as a rock. And so the letter of the law. So when he would go to heal someone on the Sabbath, the Pharisees would get all upset because the letter of the law said, regardless of what kind of work you were going to do, you couldn't do any work, even if it would heal someone on the Sabbath. So the law became their God. And Jesus, with his death and resurrection, also brings us to the new covenant, which we see in the reading today. And that new covenant is the law written on our hearts. We're going to talk more about this on the other side of the break. You're listening to St. Anthony Overnight from St. Anthony Parish in Alston, Massachusetts, right here on WEZE. You can now leave a message for us, which we can air and discuss on this program. Just call 617-297-7452. That's 617-297-7452. 617-297-7452. Feel free to call, leave a comment, a question, or even feedback, and we may play it on the air. I can discuss your comment or question as well, so give that a try. 617-297-7452, 617-297-7452. I want to call your attention to Catholic TV, which offers great faith-filled, family-friendly programming 24 hours a day. You can find your cable channel at www.getcatholictv.com, and you can watch online on the free apps or check out the YouTube channel. Daily Mass, Rosaries, the Divine Mercy Chaplet, and the Our Lady of Perpetual Help Novena are all available online and on demand. Check out CatholicTV.com. And don't forget our own website, CatholicAudiomedia.com, where you can connect to the parish, you can connect and listen to the show. You can also, hey, there's this great show that's on the air. I heard it this morning. Check it out, see what they have to say. Or, I know that this morning they were talking about something about the faith, and why don't you listen to it and tell me what you think? Things like that. You can do that. You can tell other people where they can find it. So, CatholicAudiomedia.com. And that connects us to the parish, which you can also find at stanthonyalston.org. But if you live in the Boston area and like to come visit the actual place instead of the virtual place, then come see us at 43 Holton Street in Alston, Massachusetts, ALLSTON. So we're talking about this powerful now, what the letter says now is the law, which is the spirit of the law, not the letter of the law. The spirit of the law is now written on our hearts, and that's what we're called to follow. So it's the spirit of the law, not the letter of the law. Now, what's the difference? Well, right back to what Jesus was saying when he healed people on the Sabbath. So he's healing people on the Sabbath, and the Pharisees are saying, no, the law says you can't do that. That's the letter of the law. But the spirit of the law is do unto others as would you have others do unto you. And the law itself is love God, love neighbor. Kind of an interesting thing that I discovered in, I forget where I read it, one of the saints. We understand that Jesus was incarnated, and we also understand that he had to live the law perfectly in order for us to be saved. That's something that St. Maximus the Confessor explains as well from his time, and he explains it in a very beautiful way. But he had to live the law perfectly. So you might say, well, why did Jesus have to be incarnated Well, part of it because he was fully human, fully alive. Last week we talked about St. Gregory Nazianzen said that if any part of him that was not on the cross as a human being, so if he wasn't fully human, we would not be saved. So he was fully human. But the other thing is he had to live the law perfectly as a human being. So he had to be incarnated and come as a child, as a baby, as, seconds old, all the way up to when he died on the cross. That was all part of living the law. That's why that's essential. And with that law is now written on our hearts. So we're called to live the law of charity, love of God, love of neighbor. And that's what we're called to do. So we can live the law, the letter of the law, until the cows come home, and we can live uncharitably. So when you're going to confession again, and you're thinking, this is why I don't like these written examinations of conscience, because they don't really do it well. And that's why you want to look at, instead of did I do X, Y, and Z that's written on a written, where was I not charitable to another person? And that's a question to ask. Where was I not charitable? Where was I not because that's what we're called to be. Treat others as we would want ourselves to be treated. And when we do treat others in charity, that's when we are living the law. When we are not treating others in charity, and that's where sin comes in, then we're not living the law. And always understand that. We'll talk more on Monday. In the meantime, have yourself a blessed day. If you would like to support our program, please consider a donation to St. Anthony Parish in Allston, Massachusetts. There are several ways to consider this. One is to purchase any of our merchandise, which you can find at the shopping tab at CatholicAudiomedia.com. That's CatholicAudiomedia.com. There are coffee mugs there. There's also my latest book, Encounter Christ in Your Humanity, all of which you can find at the shopping tab at CatholicAudiomedia.com. You can also donate to the show directly through either the Donate tab, also at CatholicAudiomedia.com, or by sending a donation to the U.S. Postal Service with your questions and comments at 43 Holton Street, Allston, Massachusetts, 02134. That's St. Anthony Parish, 43 Holton Street, Allston, Massachusetts, 02134. Finally, the best way you can support our parish is to attend Mass on Sundays at 10 o'clock and be a part of our parish. We thank you for any support you would like to give to St. Anthony Parish in Allston, Massachusetts, the sponsoring parish for this media outreach to Catholics and other Christians in the WROL, WEZE, and podcast listening audience. In Cristo vivimos.